리차드 도킨스, Outgrowing God. Chapter 6. How do we decide what's good? Like all other animals, we humans are the product of hundreds of millions of years of evolution. Brains evolve like all other parts of the body, and that means that body like doing, what feel like to alone, also evolve. We inherit from our ancestors a liking for sweet things and the ick reaction to the smell of decay. You inherit evolved sexual desires. All those are easy to understand. In moderation, sugar is good for us, although too much is not. We now live in a world where too much sugar is readily available. But this was not true of our wild ancestors on the African savanna. Fruit was good for them, and many fruits contain moderate amount of sugar. It was impossible to get too much sugar, so we evolved an open-ended appetite for it. The smell of decay is associated with dangerous bacteria. It benefited our ancestors to avoid decaying meat, and that include a revolt to the smell. It's obvious why we evolved the desire for the opposite sex. Sexual desire lead to baby, and those babies then carry the genes to give them sexual desires when they grew up. You are all descended from an unknown line of ancestors who mated with a member of the opposite sex, and you have inherited their desire to do so. But now, for something less easy to understand, we seem able to have inherited the desire to be nice to other people, to be friends with them, spend time with them, cooperate with them, sympathize when they are in distress, help them when they are down. The evolutionary reason to be nice is hard to explain. They must wait until chapter 11, after the chapters on evolution itself. Meanwhile, I can only ask you to accept that niceness of a special limited kind is a part of our evolutionary heritage, like sexual desire, and it probably feed into our sense of right and wrong. You have evolved moral values inherited from our remote ancestors, and yet they can only a part of answer to the question that has this chapter. This must be so, if only because our view of right and wrong changed as the centuries go by, and changed on a historical time scale much too fast to represent evolutionary change. You can see it as the decades go by. It's almost like something in the air. Of course, it isn't literally in the air. It's a combination of lots of things, so it sort of feels like in the air because it can't be pinned down into any one place. The dominant moral values of the 21st century in which we are now living are noticeably different from those of even 100 years ago. They are even more difficult from those that prevailed in the 18th century. Then keeping slaves was simply what people did, including my ancestors in Jamaica, I'm sorry to say, and they thought civilization would collapse if the slaves were freed. The great Thomas Jefferson, third President of the United States, and the main author of the U.S. Constitution, kept slaves. So did George Washington, the first president. Let's at least hope they and my ancestors didn't know the appalling condition in the ships that transported the slaves from West Africa. By the way, it wasn't just white Europeans and African Americans who took slaves from Africa. While Europeans were taking slaves from West Africa, Arabs were taking them from East Africa. Swahili, which has become the dominant language of Equatorial East Africa, developed as the language of the Arab slave trade. It contains many words of Arabic origin. African chiefs also kept slaves themselves, as well as capturing and selling them to European and Arab traders. Not surprisingly, since the Bible's morality was of its time, slavery is not condemned there. Even the New Testament is full of exhortation like, slaves, obey your earthly master with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Obey them not only to win their favor when their eyes is on you, but like slaves of Christ, doing will of God from your heart. Ephesians 6:5. Here's another. All who are under yoke of slavery should consider their master worthy of full respect, so that God's name and our teaching may not be slandered. 1 Timothy 6. The revolt against slavery, which we feel today, is just one example of a change in the air. Abraham Lincoln, one of America's most revered president, was Charles Dine's exact contemporary, born the same February day in 1809. Dine was passionately against slavery, and Lincoln actually freed the slaves in America. Yet, it would not be occurred to either Dine or Lincoln that Africans could be the weaker of what they called the civilized races. Dine's friend Thomas Henry Huxley was an even more obviously advanced liberal thinker. Yet in 1871 he wrote this: "No rational man, cognizant of the fact, believes that the average Negro is the weaker, still less the superior, of the white man. And if this be true, it is simply incredible that when all his disabilities is removed and our prosperous relative has a fair field and no favor, as well as no oppressor, he will be able to compete successfully with his bigger-brained and smaller-jawed rival, in a contest which is to be carried on by sword and not by fight. The highest places in the hierarchy of civilization will assuredly not be written within the reach of our dusky cousins." The President Lincoln said this in 1858. "I'll say, then, that I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. That I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry the white people. And I'll say, in addition of this, that there is a physical difference between white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together in terms of social and political equality. And in as much as they cannot so live, while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior. And I, as much as any other than man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. Truly, whatever was in the air in the 19th century, something very different hovers about us today. It's for historians who would condemn Lincoln and Dine and Huxley as racist. They were as near to being non-racist men of their time ever got. They were men of the 19th century. If they'd been born 2 centuries later, they'd have been horrified by those two quotations. You don't even have to wait 1 century to notice a change in moral values. In chapter 5, we consider the bomber crews who, on both sides, slaughtered masses of civilians in the Second World War. To start it, the bombing focused on industrial centers like Coventry in Britain and Essen in Germany, where arms were being manufactured. Bombing was inaccurate in those days, and civilian casualties were inevitable, but both sides resented their civilian deaths. They retaliated, and later in the war, the bombing raids were scaled up. Civilian casualty ceased to be byproduct and became the objective. Between 13 and 15 February 1945, 722 British and 527 US planes flattened the ancient and beautiful German city of Dresden with high explosive and fire bombs. The exact number of civilian casualties will never be known, but realistic estimates put it at more than 100,000. That's comparable to the figures for which of the atomic bombs that destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945.